For decades, governments had what they thought was a pretty simple idea for helping the poor. Just make essential stuff cheap. Sounds logical, right? Well, it turned out to be a colossal failure. Today, we're going to dive into the global revolution in social protection, a huge shift from these leaky, inefficient handouts to something much smarter, targeted, strategic investments in people.
It's one of the most fundamental questions any government has to answer. And, the way we've answered it has changed dramatically. We've gone from these broad, untargeted giveaways to something way more precise and, frankly, way more effective. So let's start by looking at the old way of doing things.
For a long, long time, the main tool in the toolbox was something called a price subsidy. The thinking was pretty straightforward. Hey, if poor people need fuel and food, let's just make fuel and food cheaper for the entire country. Simple, right? Well, not quite.
And this is where the whole thing just falls apart. Think about it for a second. Who really gets the most out of a fuel subsidy? Is it the farmer with a small scooter? Or is it the wealthy person in the city with 2 giant gas-guzzling SUVs? Because the rich consume so much more, they end up capturing a way bigger piece of that government money.
This gives us the perfect metaphor for the whole problem. Economists call it leakage. Imagine you're trying to carry water to someone who's thirsty, but the bucket you're using is full of holes. By the time you get there, most of the water, the government's money, has just leaked out, going to people who weren't even thirsty in the first place.
So we have this fundamental issue, the leaky subsidy problem. It's just a wildly inefficient, super wasteful way to spend public money. But luckily, modern thinking has found a way to patch up these leaks.
Here it is. This is the core shift in a nutshell. Instead of trying to mess with the price of goods for everybody, the new way is to give money, a cash transfer, directly to the people who actually need it and only to them. This lets the market do its thing, while still providing this really targeted safety net.
So the modern solution is cash. By giving money directly to the poor, you essentially plug the leaks in that bucket, making sure every single dollar or peso or rupee actually gets to its target. But how do you do that? How does it work in the real world? Let's look at a couple of incredible examples.
Our first stop is the Philippines, which has one of the most famous programs in the world. But what's really interesting is how they frame it. They don't call it a handout. They call it a contract, an investment in the country's future. The key phrase you need to know here is conditional cash transfer, or CCT. This isn't just about giving away free money. That word conditional is everything. Families get the cash, but only if they take certain actions that are designed to help break the cycle of poverty for good.
So, what's in this contract? What do families actually have to do? Well, in the Philippines' big program known as 4Ps, the government provides the cash, and in return, families agree to 3 main things. First, health. Young kids have to get regular checkups and vaccines. Second, education. The kids have to show up for school at least 85% of the time. And third, family development. Parents have to attend sessions on things like responsible parenting. It's a true partnership.
This quote just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the philosophy. It's not about just helping a family get through the month. It's about investing in the next generation. It's about making sure kids are healthier and better educated so they have a real shot at a better life.
Of course. Look, no system is perfect. Targeting cash transfers like this has its own set of challenges. You can have inclusion errors, which is basically when people who aren't poor manage to get the money. And then you have exclusion errors, where genuinely poor families who desperately need the help are accidentally left out. Getting that targeting right is a constant battle.
Now, getting that targeting right is a massive challenge. So for our next case study, let's go to India. They tackle this problem from a totally different angle, using a massive technological solution to fight an even bigger problem, corruption. To understand the sheer scale of the problem India was up against, you just have to hear this famous quote from the 1980s. A mind-blowing 85% of welfare money was just vanishing, lost to bureaucracy and corruption, siphoned off by middlemen before it ever got to the people it was meant for. The bucket wasn't just leaky, it was barely there at all.
India's solution was this technological revolution called the Jam Trinity. It's a whole system built on 3 pillars. First, J for John Donne, a huge national push to get every single citizen a bank account. Second, A for Azar, the world's biggest biometric ID system, giving every person a unique identity tied to their fingerprint or their eyeball. And third, M for mobile, using the power of cell phones to tie it all together.
So what was the impact? Well, by creating this digital pipeline, the government could send money directly to a person's bank account, and that account could only be accessed with their unique thumbprint.
This instantly vaporized millions of ghost beneficiaries, fake names on paper lists that corrupt officials use to steal money. The result? An estimated $42 billion saved. A staggering amount of corruption, just wiped out by technology.
Okay, but all of this leads to the single most common criticism you hear about cash transfers. You know the one. If you give people money, won't they just get lazy and stop working? Let's tackle this dependency myth head on.
It really is the biggest objection you hear, and it's a fair question. If you give people money, do they lose their motivation? Well, luckily for us, researchers have studied this exact question all over the world. So let's see what the evidence actually says.
The evidence, from dozens upon dozens of studies across the globe, is just overwhelming and conclusive. First, adults do not stop working. Second, many actually use that little bit of cash as seed money to become more productive, starting tiny businesses. And third, that money isn't wasted. Despite all the tired old stereotypes, the data is crystal clear. It's spent on food, on medicine, and on school supplies for their kids. The dependency myth is, to put it simply, a myth.
So the big takeaway here is this. We are living through a global shift in how we even think about social protection. We're moving away from that old, leaky model of inefficient dole-outs and moving toward these highly targeted, data-driven systems that we now see as smart human capital investments.
And that leaves us with a final thought for the future. We've gone from seeing aid as a leaky handout to seeing it as a smart investment in people. And we now have the technology to make those investments with almost surgical precision. So the question for the next decade is this. What is the next great investment we can make to not just manage poverty, but to truly unleash human potential on a global scale?